guys, I'm Matt and this is the Motorworks channel. My oh my, is it a nice day today. Now I know what you guys are thinking, let's go ride. Now before we do that, there's a couple of things you want to look at on your motorcycle before you actually take it out on the road. And in today's video, we're going to go over all the things you want to check before you throw that leg over the motorcycle. We're also going to feature in future videos the how to actually repair the certain items that maybe when you check it, it needs a little bit of attention. So let's get started. First thing we need is a motorcycle. So hopefully this works. Holy crap, it worked. I mean, I meant to do that. So what we have here is my beautiful 2004 Suzuki GS 500. And the way we're going to do this today is we're going to start the front of the bike and work our way back to the rear of the motorcycle. And before we get started, and as you at home should also do, the night before you know you want to ride your bike, let's make sure that that battery is nice and charged up. And we'll go over that process right now. So on this bike, you need a key to get the seat off. On other bikes, sometimes you need to unbolt the seat. There's a couple different ways of accessing batteries on different motorcycles. But on this bike in particular, all I need is a key. Pop that in the lock there. And then lift up on the back and slide that seat out. And we'll set that away. Now that we have access to the battery here, we can start looking to see under here if a critter has built a nest or anything, and it doesn't look like they have for this, so we kind of lucked out with that. We're going to want to go ahead and hook the battery up to our charger. I just have a simple charger here, about $20 to $30 for a charger like this. And the nice thing about a charger like this is it actually is a battery charger and maintainer, meaning once your battery's charged, this won't continue to put charge voltage to your battery. It'll actually stop charging your battery and just maintain it where it's at. It's a good feature to have on a charger, so if you are looking at getting one, this would be a good option. It's inexpensive and it has all the built-in safety features with it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead. It comes with terminal ends. Make sure that the fuse inside is good and it's not blown. Okay, and once that's done, we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at our battery here, make sure that we're hooking it up to the positive red and the negative with the black. Okay, so just hook it up like that, negative black, and then on this end here, go ahead, take that water cap off there. We'll plug it into, then we'll go ahead and plug this into the outlet. Then it'll come with instructions and it'll actually explain what the different LEDs mean. So read your manual with that, and then we'll just charge that battery while I go over the motorcycle. Now that we have that battery hooked up to the charger, we can go ahead and move on to the front of the motorcycle here. So the things we're going to look for on the front of the bike are tire, both condition as well as pressure, and we're also going to inspect the valve stem. All right, we're also going to look at fork seals and the brakes. And then once we're done with that, we'll jack the bike up and we'll actually check the steering of the motorcycle. So let's go ahead and we'll get started with the tires now. Okay guys, so when we're checking the tire, what we're looking for on the actual condition of the tire, number one, we're making sure that the tread is actually in good shape. So let's take a look now. Alright, so the tread looks fairly good. Alrighty, if you're unsure if the tread's good, what's on the tire is called a tire wear indicator. And what that is a little raised piece of rubber inside your tread that lets you know when your tire's getting close to needing replaced. Alright, it's a little raised piece and it sticks up just enough to give you about a 2/32 reading, which is about the time you need to replace your tires. That's where the tire tread wear indicator would be located. There's a little arrow that indicates where it is on your tire. Or some bikes also have the letters TWI. But what we do is we just come across here, and I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's a little raised piece of rubber there. There's also one in the middle of the tire there. And when this tire wears down to that edge of that, it's about time to get some new tires. Okay? Okay, so some other things you want to look for on your tire as you're checking the tread is dry rot. You also want to look for any type of damage to the tire itself, be it a nail or maybe there's a slash in your tire. But as you're looking at your tread, those are some things also to look for. Alright guys, so now that we've checked that tire over, it looks good. We didn't see any damage to the tire. What we're going to want to do now is check the tire pressure. Now before we do that, we have to first locate the valve stem. Let's do that now. Okay, here's the valve stem here. So to check the tire pressure, we have to first unscrew the valve stem cap. Set that down. And then, before we actually check tire pressure, we're going to check the valve stem itself and look for any damage. So the way we do that, if we just push that over there, and what we're looking for is any dry rot around where the actual valve stem meets the wheel. So just move that around, look for any cracking, listen for any leaks as you're doing so. But that one looks fairly good, so let's go ahead and check the tire pressure. So to do that, we need our tire gauge. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take the tip of our tire gauge here, and we're going to go ahead and just press down on the valve stem like as so. And look at that, guys, 23 pounds of air. This bike sat for about 3 months without being ridden. So this is why this is such an important step here. Now what we're going to do is we'll adjust that tire pressure to the recommended pressure, which is 33 psi in the front and 41 in the back. So to get the front end off the ground, what we're going to want to do is we're going to go ahead and use a jack. Now if your bike has a side stand, a jack's kind of your only option. For me, I have a center stand on this, so I can use a jack, or I can also use a jill. It worked! It worked! Okay. So with the jill, what the other person could do is they could just hold down on the back of the bike. Check the front end.
Can I please go back to laundry now?
We'll just use a jack today. Alright guys, so now that we have the bike jacked up, we're going to go ahead and we're going to check the front steering. So the way we want to do that is we just want to go ahead, grab a hold of the wheel, and turn the bike from left to right. And what we want is a nice even feel the whole way from one end to the other. We don't want any spots that kind of catch, that kind of catch there, but we want it to be nice and smooth from right to left. All right, guys, so one other thing when we have the front end jacked up here and we're checking the steering, we also want to make sure that none of the components in there are rubbing on anything. So we'll go ahead and look up through and we'll check to see and make sure that nothing's touching. We have the brake line here. We want to make sure that that's not touching on anything. That looks good there. Everything's nice and secure and in place. Got the speedometer cable over here. That's nice and secure. Everything's in place on that. Nothing's rubbing on anything there. Okay, this looks good. All right, now that we actually checked the steering on the motorcycle, we're going to want to go ahead and check for any free play in the suspension as well as the wheel. So let's go ahead, grab one side of the fork leg and the other, and just kind of wiggle that forward and back there. And all you're feeling for is any kind of loose free play in there. All right, and then at the same time, after we're done doing that, we're going to go ahead and wiggle that, make sure there's no free play in there. All right. Okay, guys, now that we checked the free play, let's go ahead and make sure that wheel spins freely. So just go ahead, grab a hold of that, spin the wheel. Should spin free. All right. Also, what we want to do is we'll reach up here and we'll apply the front brake as we're spinning it. It should work, it should stop the wheel, but also after you release it, it should spin freely again. If it doesn't, then you might have a problem in your braking system. It's also a good time now to check your brake fluid. It should be clear and above the lower mark. All right, so let's go ahead and check the fork seals now. Okay, so what we're looking for on the fork seals is any type of oil. So you wipe your hands on there and they should come back dry. So we'll check this side. Same thing. Okay, no oily residue. All right, that's the key thing with fork seals. What ends up happening over time, dirt, debris, bugs, whatever gets on your actual fork leg will come down into the seal here, and it'll actually damage the fork seal itself, causing the fork oil that's inside there to leak out onto the fork, and then eventually it'll start leaking down and get onto your brake pads. So that's what we want to avoid. So any chance you get, always check those fork seals, make sure that they're nice and dry. If they are leaking, it might be time to get them in and get those serviced. But I will have a video on how to replace fork seals coming soon, because I have a couple set that I need to do, so stay tuned. Okay guys, moving on to the front brakes. Okay, so what we're going to do with the front brakes is we're just going to inspect the pads. Okay, so on the pads, what we're looking for is brake pad material. That's this right here. Alright, this is the backing plate here, and this is the brake pad material here. Okay, so on these they have a wear indicator. So I can see this wear indicator, so that means that these brake pads are good. If you can't see material and you only see the backing plate, it might be time to take the bike into the shop, or stay tuned because I'll have a more in-depth on brake pads and how to replace them coming soon. Alright, but that's the brakes. These look good. I'm gonna go ahead, put that on, and we'll move on to the next. Okay, so we're gonna check the back end just like the front. Look for any free play, check tread, check valve stem, tire pressure, and the brakes. So we check the condition of the tire, we check the tire pressure, and we also check that valve stem. The brakes look good. So now we're going to move on to the chain and how to check as well as lube your chain. Okay, so to actually check your chain, what we're going to do is we're going to look it all over. We're going to make sure that it has a good amount of chain free play which is your chain tension, and we're also going to check the sprocket and make sure it's not worn. And we're also going to check the fitment of the chain onto the sprocket. Okay, so let's go ahead. Alrighty guys, so now we're moving on to the chain tension, and the way to check that is you want to locate about the middle point of the chain. So somewhere right about here is going to be our middle point. Okay, now that we've located a good spot, we're going to go ahead and pull down on the chain. We'll see where that goes to there. So for me, I'm getting about 10.5 inches there to this part of the chain here, the top side of the chain. Okay, and then when we lift up, we want to go to the bottom side of the chain, and I'm getting about 11.5, 11.25. So that's about an inch. Now this chain is cold, so that's a good chain tension for a cold chain. Recommended is anywhere from an inch to an inch and a half of free play is acceptable. Any more than that and the chain's going to need to be adjusted. And again, I have a video that goes all about chains and how to maintain them coming up. So this chain tension looks good here. Now what we want to do with a chain is we want to check for any tight or loose spots on the chain, and I'll show you how to do that now. Okay guys, so now that we checked the tension and we know what we're looking for, now we want to check for those tight or loose spots I talked about. So the best way to do that is locate your valve stem right here, and what we want to do is we want to go ahead and use this valve stem as a guide. So let's go ahead, we'll check the chain tension here, the valve stem at this position there. Okay, that looks good. So we're going to take and we're going to rotate that valve stem 180 degrees from where it is. So it went from the top, now it's on the bottom. We're going to go ahead, we're going to check that chain again. Okay, so this chain being fairly new, and I like to keep it maintained fairly well, is good. So let's go ahead and we're going to move on to actually lubing the chain. So get yourself some chain lube, and after you adjust your chain, that's the time you want to lube it. Again, we're not going to go into detail on how to adjust the chain. Like I said, I have a more detailed video coming out on actual chain maintenance, but just basic stuff to get you riding. Make sure you have yourself a can of chain lube. It doesn't matter the brand because all chain lubes are different. Certain people like different style. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to lube the chain. All right, it's nice that they have these little straws on here. Sometimes I like to put a little bend into mine. Okay, so the idea is you want to get that straw tip right in between. There's an O-ring that sits in between this link and this link. And all you really want to do is get this chain lube to rest on that O-ring nicely. There's one on this side as well as another one on this side. So all we really want to do is we want to get enough chain lube to saturate those O-rings. So let's take a rag, we'll set it on the ground here. When you're lubing your chain, you want to make sure you keep the chain lube off the tire as best as you can. So go ahead and just spin the back tire. All right, then we're going to go to the other side. Spin the back. Let's go ahead and check the actual condition of the chain and sprocket. So an easy way to do that is to come down here and we'll look. What we want to do is we want to see if there's any movement or free play with that chain on this sprocket. There shouldn't be any movement up and down, in and out, side to side. It should fit pretty snugly around that sprocket. Okay, the other thing you want to look at is the actual sprocket itself. Make sure that these aren't sharp pointy daggers. They should be pretty dull at the tops, the peaks there, and this shouldn't be egged out or hollowed out. This one is a fairly new sprocket, so this one's actually in good shape. There's not a lot of free play back here, no forward and back movement, so this is actually looking pretty good. Okay, Okay, so that concludes the back side of the motorcycle. We got some lube on that chain. We do need to put air in the tires, which but we've checked everything on the back of the bike. It looks good. Now it's time to see if our battery's nice and charged up and ready to fire up. Alright guys, so before we fire the bike up, what we're going to do is we're going to check the oil. Alright, this bike here doesn't have coolant. If your bike does, this is a good time to also check the coolant level in the reserve tank as well as the radiator if it's easily accessible. But what we're going to do is we're going to check the oil. Now on a motorcycle, the way to check the oil is you want to make sure that that bike is upright. So on this one I have a center stand, so it's a little bit easier for me to check the oil, but you basically want to make sure that that bike is upright. So sometimes you might have to ask somebody to hold the bike upright, or you might have to try and balance it upright, but just make sure that that bike is straight up and down versus on the side stand. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and check the oil now. That out. Clean it off. Back in there. Alrighty. So it's a little bit dark. Probably wouldn't hurt to change it, but the oil level is up to the full mark. So that means that it's ready to be started up. Those are all the basic checks there you want to make. Again, I'll have videos to go into more detail on exactly how to make the adjustments needed or the repairs as needed. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull this off of the charger, unplug it, put that to the side. We're going to see if she runs. Now on this bike I have it choked because it is carbureted. We'll turn it on and see if she starts up.
Okay, now's the time we want to go ahead and check our controls as well as the switches, brake light switches for both the front and rear brakes, as well as turn signal switches, high and low beam switch, and the horn.
Okay guys, that's it. Just those few simple checks. Should take you anywhere from about 30 minutes to about 45 minutes from start to finish. If you have any questions or there's something I wasn't quite clear about on the video, go ahead and leave a comment below. Again, like I said, I didn't try to go into too much detail on each individual section because I'm going to have future videos that go into more detail and explain it a little bit more in depth. This is just general checks. If there's anything you feel isn't right on your bike, take it into the dealership, have them look it over for you really good. But this is something to do before you get on that bike to make sure that that bike's in tip-top shape. Again, this is the Motorworks Garage. Thanks for stopping out. Again, like, comment, and share. I'm going to head off and get some gas. Oh, wait. All right, I'll take it.